Good evening. The day began with peaceful protests over tuition fees and descended into the kind of sustained violence and trouble rarely seen in Britain. Protesters injured, others arrested, police officers attacked, several of them seriously hurt, government buildings vandalised. And tonight the heir to the throne was caught up in the violence when Prince Charles and Camilla's car was attacked in central London, daubed in paint and a window cracked. We'll get reaction to tonight's scenes in a moment from David Willits. Inside Parliament this afternoon, the MPs debated the controversial increase in tuition fees to up to £9,000 a year in England. In Scotland, the Education Secretary has ruled out tuition fees altogether. And when it came to the Westminster vote, the revolt by Liberal Democrats meant the measure passed by just 21 votes. Michael Crick followed today's extraordinary events. His report contains flash photography.
Tonight, substantial parts of central London have frankly been out of control, with some of the most serious attacks on organs of the British state since the war. Around Parliament Square this evening, hundreds of students and other protesters attacked Her Majesty's Treasury, where they scrawled graffiti, smashed windows and broke inside. Only riot police stopped a full-scale invasion of the building. The Supreme Court nearby was also a target. Also under siege, the heir to the throne, Prince Charles. In Oxford Street, mobile phone footage captures the moment as protesters attacked the car carrying Charles and Camilla to a royal variety performance.
Oh my God!
The couple looked terrified, and stills taken afterwards show how one of the windows was smashed and the car hit with paint.
Prince Charles was driving past, right? All I saw, a couple of people were kicking the door. He got terrified, he drove on, police came down and everyone just...
Did you see them do the graffiti?
I didn't see them do the graffiti, I didn't see you smash the window, but I saw Prince Charles and his car get attacked.
We have seen on the streets of London today the appalling levels of violence that we have seen. This has nothing to do with peaceful protest. And attacks on peace officers and property show that some of the protesters had no respect for Londoners, for London or for its citizens. And I think the police have done a tough job today in exceptionally difficult circumstances. We thank them for their professionalism because they've put themselves on the line to keep London's streets and citizens safe. Peaceful protest is acceptable. Violent protest and criminal damage are not.
Trouble in central London began brewing this morning, even before the Commons debate started, as mounted police tried, without success, to stop protesters from gathering outside the House of Commons. Inside, the Lib Dem Business Secretary Vince Cable must also have felt almost as beleaguered as he struggled against Labour heckles and interventions to make his case for raising the cap on tuition fees to £9,000 a year.
We could have made a decision to drastically cut the number of university students. We could have cut student maintenance. We could have cut the funding to universities without replacing it. But instead, we have opted for a set of policies that provides a strong base for university funding, which makes a major contribution to reducing the deficit and introducing a significantly more progressive system of graduate payments than we inherited. And I'm proud to put forward that measure to this House.
For Labour, John Denham, who rebelled over Iraq, encouraged coalition MPs now to follow his example.
I do know what you're going through. It is very hard to stand aside from friends and colleagues with whom you've shared many a battle. But I'll say this, after you've done it, you realise it wasn't half as bad as you thought it would be before you did it. The self-respect you gain far outweighs any temporary loss of position, power or income. And the truth is that in any generous political party, and mine is not the only generous political party in this House, there is usually a way back. Mr. Speaker, this decision matters so much to so many people. I'd say to the House, if you don't believe in it, vote against it.
As the protests and the mayhem grew outside, MPs inside couldn't hear them, couldn't see them, barely mentioned them, and their debate was peppered by regular interventions from Tory and Lib Dem rebels.
It isn't too late. There needs to be a rethink. There needs to be a proper review of how we can come up with the best system for higher education and indeed all post-18 education in this country.
But I urge the government just to look again, to think again, and to come back to this issue next year, 6 months' time, when we can have had a proper conversation, because we only get to do this once. And if we cede the principle of £9,000 tuition fees, I'm deeply concerned about the message that sends out.
After 5 hours of sometimes passionate exchanges, they voted.
The ayes to the right, 323. The noes to the left, 302.
A coalition majority of 21, exactly a quarter of what it should be, indicating significant numbers of rebels in both governing parties. 28 Liberal Democrat MPs voted with the government, 21 against and 5 abstained. So around half of all Lib Dem MPs backed the leadership. Meanwhile, 6 Conservatives voted against the government and 2 abstained. And as a result of all this, 3 PPS's, parliamentary aides, had to resign their posts after defying the whips. Jenny Willett and Mike Crockett for the Liberal Democrats, and Lee Scott, a Conservative. So, in the end, as expected, the government won today's vote with reasonable comfort. And tuition fees are probably the most difficult issue on the coalition's immediate agenda. But government business managers will be aware that very nearly 10% of the coalition's MPs today failed to support the government. And the thing about rebelling in Parliament is that it can become something of a habit. But votes in Parliament may not deter violent protests or quell public anger. Parliament Square has been cleared tonight for now, but many demonstrators are inspired by what happened with the poll tax 20 years ago. That too was agreed by MPs, but ministers eventually ditched it after violent street battles and deep public hostility.
Michael Crick, well, we've just had the latest update on injuries after the disturbances. 43 protesters attended hospital, with 36 being taken there by the London Ambulance Service. And 12 officers have been injured, with 6 requiring hospital treatment. Well, we're joined now by the University's Minister, David Willits.